One of the most gifted of Frenchmen, in point of great intellectual endowments, was Benjamin Constant. But, blasé at 20, his life was only a prolonged wail, instead of a harvest of the great deeds which he was capable of accomplishing with ordinary diligence and self-control. He resolved upon doing so many things, which he never did, that people came to speak of him as Constant the Inconstant. He was a fluent and brilliant writer, and cherished the ambition of writing works, which the world would not willingly let die. But whilst Constant affected the highest thinking, unhappily he practiced the lowest living. Nor did the transcendentalism of his books atone for the meanness of his life. He frequented the gaming tables while engaged in preparing his work upon religion, and carried on a disreputable intrigue while writing his Adolphe. With all his powers of intellect, he was powerless, because he had no faith in virtue. "Bah!" said he, "what are honor and dignity? The longer I live, the more clearly I see there is nothing in them." It was the howl of a miserable man. He described himself as but ashes and dust. "I pass," said he, "like a shadow over the earth, accompanied by misery and ennui." He wished for Voltaire's energy, which he would rather have possessed than his genius. But he had no strength of purpose, nothing but wishes. His life, prematurely exhausted, had become but a heap of broken links. He spoke of himself as a person with one foot in the air. He admitted that he had no principles, and no moral consistency. Hence, with his splendid talents, he contrived to do nothing. And, after living many years miserable, he died worn out and wretched. The career of Augustin Thierry, the author of the History of the Norman Conquest, affords an admirable contrast to that of Constant. His entire life presented a striking example of perseverance, diligence, self-culture, and untiring devotion to knowledge. In the pursuit he lost his eyesight, lost his health, but never lost his love of truth. When so feeble that he was carried from room to room, like a helpless infant, in the arms of a nurse, his brave spirit never failed him. And blind and helpless though he was, he concluded his literary career in the following noble words: "If, as I think, the interest of science is counted in the number of great national interests, I have given my country all that the soldier, mutilated on the field of battle, gives her. Whatever may be the fate of my labors, this example, I hope, will not be lost. I would wish it to serve to combat the species of moral weakness which is the disease of our present generation. To bring back into the straight road of life some of those enervated souls that complain of wanting faith, that know not what to do, and seek everywhere, without finding it, an object of worship and admiration. Why say, with so much bitterness, that in the world, constituted as it is, there is no air for all lungs, no employment for all minds? Is not calm and serious study there? And is not that a refuge, a hope, a field within the reach of all of us? With it, evil days are passed over without their weight being felt. Every one can make his own destiny, everyone employ his life nobly. This is what I have done, and would do again if I had to recommence my career. I would choose that which has brought me where I am. Blind, and suffering without hope, and almost without intermission, I may give this testimony, which from me will not appear suspicious. There is something in the world better than sensual enjoyments, better than fortune, better than health itself. It is devotion to knowledge." Coleridge, in many respects, resembled Constant. He possessed equally brilliant powers, but was similarly infirm of purpose. With all his great intellectual gifts, he wanted the gift of industry, and was averse to continuous labor. He wanted also the sense of independence, and thought it no degradation to leave his wife and children to be maintained by the brain work of the noble Southey, while he himself retired to Highgate Grove to discourse transcendentalism to his disciples, looking down contemptuously upon the honest work going forward beneath him amidst the din and smoke of London. With remunerative employment at his command he stooped to accept the charity of friends. and, notwithstanding his lofty ideas of philosophy, he condescended to humiliations from which many a day laborer would have shrunk. How different in spirit was Southey! Laboring not merely at work of his own choice, and at task work often tedious and distasteful, but also unremittingly and with the utmost eagerness seeking and storing knowledge purely for the love of it. Every day, every hour had its allotted employment, engagements to publishers requiring punctual fulfillment. The current expenses of a large household duty to provide, for Southey had no crop growing while his pen was idle. My ways, he used to say, are as broad as the King's High Road, and my means lie in an inkstand. Robert Nicoll wrote to a friend, after reading the Recollections of Coleridge, what a mighty intellect was lost in that man for want of a little energy, a little determination. Nicoll himself was a true and brave spirit, who died young, but not before he had encountered and overcome great difficulties in life. At his outset, while carrying on a small business as a bookseller, he found himself weighed down with a debt of only £20, which he said he felt weighing like a millstone round his neck, and that, if he had it paid, he never would borrow again from mortal man. Writing to his mother at the time, he said, "Fear not for me, dear mother, for I feel myself daily growing firmer and more hopeful in spirit. The more I think and reflect, and thinking, not reading, is now my occupation, I feel that, whether I be growing richer or not, I am growing a wiser man, which is far better. Pain, poverty, and all the other wild beasts of life which so affrighten others, I am so bold as to think I could look in the face without shrinking, without losing respect for myself, faith in man's high destinies, or trust in God. There is a point which it costs much mental toil and struggling to gain, but which, when once gained, a man can look down from, as a traveler from a lofty mountain, on storms raging below, while he is walking in sunshine. That I have yet gained this point in life I will not say, but I feel myself daily nearer to it. It is not ease, but effort, not facility, but difficulty, that makes men. There is, perhaps, no station in life, in which difficulties have not to be encountered and overcome before any decided measure of success can be achieved. Those difficulties are, however, our best instructors, as our mistakes often form our best experience. Charles James Fox was accustomed to say that he hoped more from a man who failed, and yet went on in spite of his failure, than from the buoyant career of the successful. "It is all very well," said he, "to tell me that a young man has distinguished himself by a brilliant first speech. He may go on, or he may be satisfied with his first triumph. But show me a young man who has not succeeded at first, and nevertheless has gone on, and I will back that young man to do better than most of those who have succeeded at the first trial." We learn wisdom from failure much more than from success. We often discover what will do, by finding out what will not do. And probably he who never made a mistake never made a discovery. It was a failure in the attempt to make a sucking pump act, when the working bucket was more than 33 feet above the surface of the water to be raised, that led observant men to study the law of atmospheric pressure, and opened a new field of research to the genius of Galileo, Torricelli, and Boyle. John Hunter used to remark that the art of surgery would not advance until professional men had the courage to publish their failures as well as their successes. Watt the engineer said, "Of all things most wanted in mechanical engineering was a history of failures. We want," he said, "a book of blots." When Sir Humphrey Davy was once shown a dexterously manipulated experiment, he said, "I thank God I was not made a dexterous manipulator, for the most important of my discoveries have been suggested to me by failures." Another distinguished investigator in physical science has left it on record that, whenever in the course of his researches he encountered an apparently insuperable obstacle, he generally found himself on the brink of some discovery. The very greatest things, great thoughts, discoveries, inventions, have usually been nurtured in hardship, often pondered over in sorrow, and at length established with difficulty,